him. She admits that. Alone. She admits she decapitated him 26 times in the back.
He had typed up a text on his phone, and it said, "We have to kill her."
My dad had been me. I wanted it to stop.
Alton Coleman had already been on police radar before 1984 with a history of violent behavior and serious charges. That year, he was supposed to face trial in Illinois, but instead, he ran. Around the same time, Deborah Brown, who had no violent past, joined him. By summer 1984, the two were constantly moving across states. The spree began on May 29, 1984, when Coleman gained the trust of a family and took a young girl named Vernita Wheat. According to investigators, he would often use small things to gain trust with young boys and girls.
Candy, or frankfurters, or some similar inducement which would appeal to very young children.
Weeks later, she was found in an abandoned building. Around the same time, Coleman also stayed briefly at a man's home, then stole his car and disappeared. Investigators explained there was a clear method behind everything he was doing.
He will go into neighborhoods in order to get whatever items he needs for survival. This is independent of his effort to obtain young black girls for his deviant purposes.
In June, the crime spread into Indiana and Michigan. Two young girls were attacked in Gary. One survived, while the other did not.
One just raped and beat. The other, he also...
She had multiple contusions about her. She had a cord around her neck, and she had a footprint on her chest, and her right hand was tied with evidently a piece of her shirt.
The FBI placed Coleman on the 10 most wanted list due to how fast and unpredictable the situation had become. On July 13th, the pair approached a couple in Norwood, Ohio, during a normal conversation. The situation quickly turned into another attack. The man survived, but his wife did not, and their car was taken and used to continue the spree. Soon after, they kidnapped a college professor and locked him in a car trunk while traveling. He was later found alive when the car was abandoned, which helped police track their route. As the search tightened, the pair continued moving back toward Illinois. During this time, they stole another car from an elderly man in what became one of the final crimes of the spree. On July 20th, 1984, everything came to an end. A member of the public recognized them and alerted the police. Officers quickly found Coleman and Brown in a park in Evanston, Illinois, and arrested them without a struggle. In court, both faced trials in multiple states. Coleman was convicted in Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana, receiving death sentences in all three, making him one of the only people in the United States to receive death sentences from multiple states.
We, the jury, recommend that the sentence of death be imposed on the defendant, Alton Coleman.
He was executed in Ohio in 2002.
He is continuing to be very calm and very compliant, cooperating in every way, not creating any problems whatsoever over at the death house, at which time he will be offered a shower, and then we will prepare him for the execution process.
In his final moments, there was nothing dramatic.
Mr. Coleman came in wearing a non-denominational, we're told, prayer shawl.
When he walked in, he seemed quite confident. It happened quite fast. And he seemed to kind of adjust his shawl and then did not need any kind of escorting onto the...
He repeated, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and continued with that.
And then it seemed like his chest heaved. He took a couple quick breaths, maybe probably about 8 or 9, and then that's kind of when he just stopped. It was no big last breath.
Deborah Brown was also first given a death sentence, but it was later reduced to life in prison. Officials said she had a low IQ and was heavily influenced by Coleman.
It is a master-slave type relationship. She's been described as being willing to do anything that Alton Coleman tells her to do.
She remains in prison, serving life without parole. Together, Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown were linked to at least 8 murders across 6 states in just a few weeks. Their case is remembered as one of the fastest and most widespread crime sprees in the country, where constant movement made it difficult for authorities to stop them in time. Douglas Daniel Clark and Carol Mary Bundy met around Christmas 1979 at a bar in North Hollywood. Their relationship escalated fast, built around control and unhealthy shared interests. Instead of resisting Clark's increasingly violent ideas, Bundy supported him and even helped him get weapons. By early 1980, Clark started targeting young and vulnerable women in Los Angeles, often picking them up around the Sunset Strip. Over the next few months, several victims were found in different areas near highways and quiet places. At first, police thought it was one unknown killer and called him the Sunset Slayer, but Bundy knew what was happening and helped Clark stay hidden. In June 1980, things got worse when multiple victims were linked within a short time. This caught more attention from the police. Clark would come home and tell Bundy what he had done. Even though she was sometimes disturbed, she stayed with him and did not report him. The case began to fall apart in August 1980 when Bundy's former lover, John Murray, grew suspicious after she revealed too much while drunk. Afraid he would go to the police, she silenced him. Later, Clark would give his own version of what happened and try to shift the blame.
She killed her partner because they had had a falling out. The reason was they were out not only a 11-year-old girl in his van, they admit all that, everybody knows that, but they were killing girls in that van. She murdered him, she admits that, alone. She admits she decapitated him 26 times in the back or so.
This incident brought quick attention and increased pressure from investigators. As police got closer, Bundy began revealing details of the crimes, which led them directly to Clark. On August 11, 1980, both were arrested. Clark was charged with multiple murders and chose to defend himself in court, trying to blame Bundy.
Okay, I'm Douglas Clark. I've been on death row for 13 years, been involved in this case since Carol Bundy accused me of her crimes, which were a copycat of this book, since 1980, August 11th. I was 32 when I was arrested, a happy-go-lucky bachelor, chasing skirts in LA, having a good time.
And in 1983, he was found guilty of 6 murders and given the death sentence. Bundy later agreed to testify against him and, in return, accepted a deal with the court. She admitted her role in 2 murders and was sentenced to 52 years to life in prison. Carol Bundy died in prison from heart failure in 2003. Douglas Clark stayed on death row for many years before dying of natural causes in October 2023 at the age of 75. Their case became known as the Sunset Strip Killers, showing how 2 people working together carried out a shocking series of crimes. In the 1980s, the Menendez family lived in Beverly Hills, where Jose Menendez had built a successful career. From the outside, their life appeared ideal, but inside the home, Lyle and Eric later described a strict and controlling environment where fear played a constant role. Over time, they claimed they experienced emotional, physical, and abuse, while their mother became increasingly withdrawn. As they grew older, tensions escalated. Shortly before the incident, Eric shared details of the abuse with Lyle, leading to confrontations with their parents. According to their account, these confrontations made them believe their situation had become dangerous. On August 20th, 1989, both parents were killed inside the family home. In the immediate aftermath, the brothers told police they had been out and discovered the scene upon returning. Early investigations even considered an outside attack, partly due to Jose's business background, but that theory did not hold. In the weeks that followed, the brothers began spending large amounts of money from their parents' estate. Their lifestyle, luxury purchases, travel, and investments drew attention and raised suspicion among investigators. The case shifted significantly when Eric confessed during therapy sessions with Dr. Jerome Oziel. These conversations were recorded and later provided to authorities. In March 1990, both brothers were arrested and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. The first trial began in 1993 and gained national attention due to its televised coverage. Each brother had a separate jury.
Yes, I did.
And did you understand you'd be arrested for the same thing your brother was being held on?
Yes.
Did you ever consider during that period of time running away?
No.
Did you consider hiding?
No.
Did you consider fighting extradition from either or?
No, I didn't want to fight extradition.
Why?
Because I wanted to be back with my brother.
Why?
Objection irrelevant.
Mr. Menendez, you've heard the testimony of your brother that you and he killed your parents on August 20th, 1989. Did you not?
Yes, we did.
And what do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad.
Okay.
My dad.
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask.
My dad.
Just wait 1 second, Mr. Menendez. Okay, let me ask.
No, he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask him.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted to stop him.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
And when you were in Israel in 1990, did you feel that seeking help from your brother was why your brother was in jail?
Yes.
In the summer of 1989, Mr. Menendez, did you live with your parents, Jose and Mary Louise Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And how old were you?
I was 18 years old.
And had you always lived with your parents your whole life?
Yes.
You had never been sent away to school, boarding school, or anything like that?
No.
Had you on a couple of occasions gone away to camp for a week at a time?
Yes.
Other than that, did you always live with your folks?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, as of that summer of 1989, had you taken all of your vacations with your parents?
Yes.
Had you ever been an exchange student or studied away from the city in which they lived?
No.
During the years 1986, 1987, 1988, were you aware of the fact that your mother was in a noticeable emotional state a lot?
Yes.
Were you aware of the fact that your mother took medication?
Objection, this is leading.
Overruled as to that question.
Yeah, I knew she took medication.
Did you see her doing that?
Yes.
What was the form of the medication that she took? Was it a liquid? Was it pills?
It was pills.
During the summer of 1989, did that change?
Yes.
Did you see your mother taking her medication during that summer, or did you notice that she wasn't?
No, she had stopped taking it.
And had, at the same time that you realized she had stopped taking the medication, did you see any increase in her very emotional states?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, during the summer of 1989, were you being molested by your father?
Yes.
And when did that begin? How old were you?
I was 6 years old.
Now, you've seen a series of photographs that we put up on the board some weeks ago. Series is 223, 230. These in front of you for a moment. Once you look through those and tell me if you remember seeing those when they were last put up in this trial.
Yes. Yes.
Are those pictures of your 6th birthday party?
Yes.
Other scenes of that day?
Yes.
Now, do you know, can you remember whether or not the motion began before or after your 6th birthday party?
I was right around then. I believe it was just after.
Excuse me?
I believe it was just after.
After.
Mm-hmm.
And where were you living at the time?
Muncie.
You've seen the chart that we have used to identify the houses?
Yes.
Recognize the Muncie house from that chart?
Yes.
And was that house in quite a wooded area?
Yes, it was.
Can you say, Mr. Menendez, that you actually remember your 6th birthday party?
No.
You don't?
I remember a birthday party, but I mean...
But you don't know if you remember that one?
No.
They're stuck together. Excuse me. There's a photograph missing. Mr. Menendez, do you recall seeing a photograph in this series of your body?
Yes.
Do you remember that photograph being taken?
I remember a lot of photographs being taken, and I don't remember that specific one.
The types of photographs, well, your parents both took a lot of photographs of you and your brother, is that right?
Yes.
Do you remember photographs being taken?
Yes.
And who would take the ones?
My dad.
But you don't remember that specific one being taken?
No.
Do you recall when it was that you first saw or shown that photograph of yourself?
Just before I got to court.
Was while you've been in jail?
Yes.
How long, from the time you were 6 when you say your father started to molest you, how long did that go on?
12 years.
And were there episodes of sexual activity with your father over that last summer?
Yes.
Over the course of the 12 years, did the type of activity that your father engaged in with you vary and change?
Yes.
Were there patterns to the behavior so that there were actually different kinds of sexual incidents with your father?
Overall.
Yes.
And did you come over the years to give those different kinds of sexual incidents names?
Yes.
And would you tell us what were the names that you gave to those different types of incidents?
Knees.
Knees?
Knees.
K-N-E-E-S?
Yes.
That was one type?
Yes.
What was another type?
Nice. Nice.
Nice. What was another kind?
Rough.
Rough. And was there another kind still?
Yes.
And what name did you come to give that kind?
Just.
You called that sex?
Yes.
And was that you called sex some form of?
Yes.
When before your father died was the last incident of what you called?
In May.
Of what year?
1989.
And when before your father died was the last incident of knees?
In August.
Of what year?
1989.
And that last incident of knees took place in what location?
My bedroom.
The bedroom that Detective Zoller was just identifying photographs of?
Yes.
Over the course of those 12 years between age 6 and age 18, where did most of the sexual incidents with your father take place?
In my bedroom.
Starting at which house?
In Muncie.
And did episodes of sexual activity between yourself and your father also take place in the next house you lived in on Mill Road?
Yes.
And did similar incidents occur when you lived in the house in Pennington on Lakeshore Drive?
Yes.
And were there incidents in the fancy house on Mountain Avenue in Princeton?
Yes.
And were there incidents in the rented house in Calabasas?
Yes.
The defense argued the killings were driven by fear after years of abuse, while prosecutors maintained that the crimes were planned and motivated by financial gain. In 1994, both juries failed to reach a verdict, resulting in mistrials. The case remained deeply divided in public opinion. A second trial began in 1995 with a single jury and a more limited focus on abuse-related claims. In March 1996, both Lyle and Eric Menendez were found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. Later that year, they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Over the years, the brothers filed appeals, but the convictions remained in place. As more information and perspectives emerged, public opinion continued to shift, with ongoing debate about the role of abuse and motive in the case. Today, both brothers remain in prison. In the early 1960s, a couple in England carried out a series of crimes that shocked the nation and later became known as the Moors murders. At the center were Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, who met while working together in Manchester. Their crimes began in 1963 when they started targeting victims and taking them to the remote Saddleworth Moor. Pauline Reed was the first to disappear, followed months later by John Kilbride, a young boy who was lured away from a market. His elder brother later spoke about the loss, describing how deeply it affected their mother and the entire family.
He just didn't come home, John. I could see my mother getting worried then, be around 5:30, 6 o'clock. He should have been home. He just didn't come home, and it got a bit later, and then she's out to the neighbours and then down at Ashton Market looking, and then all the neighbours are out looking, and then eventually it came to the police then, and everything escalated from there then. I remember it very clear the night they turned up with John's shoe, the winkle picker. I remember it well, that. And they heard the scream downstairs, and it was my dad, that. The scream, not my mum. My mum she was in a daze. It was horrible. It was horrible, you know. And then my mother had to go down to identify John, and it was just horrible to see my mum the way she was, to see her decline into such a state to what the person she was, you know, and she never came out of it, ever came out of that.
In 1964, the pattern continued. Keith Bennett, another young boy, went missing after leaving home. Later that year, Leslie Ann Downey, a young girl, was taken from a fairground and brought to their home before being taken to the moor. The impact of her disappearance was devastating for her mother.
I'm on 11 tablets on her, sleeping tablets, and I've been on them for 30 odd years. And I can't go to sleep without them. She's always in my mind and in my thoughts.
A pattern quickly formed. Hindley often approached victims and gained their trust, while Brady carried out the acts. The isolated moorland was used to conceal what had happened. The crimes remained hidden until October 6, 1965, when Edward Evans was brought to their home. During the incident, Hindley's brother-in-law witnessed what happened and later reported it to the police. This became the turning point. Brady and Hindley were arrested soon after. Later, an officer described what the scene was. Investigators uncovered evidence linking them to multiple missing persons, and searches of Saddleworth Moor led to the discovery of burial sites. In 1966, both were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. At the time, they were found guilty of 3 murders, but the full extent of their crimes was not yet known. Years later, the case reopened. In 1985, Brady admitted involvement in additional earlier crimes. In 1987, police returned to Saddleworth Moor and recovered Pauline Reed's remains after more than 2 decades. However, Keith Bennett's remains have never been found. Even years later, there was still no clear answer about where he had been left.
I think so far as trying to locate Keith Bennett's body, whatever he knew about the situation and the possible location would have been sorted out in the 1980s. I do feel very, very sorry for the family, and indeed I've had situations where I've been on the other side in a similar situation to relatives of victims whose bodies haven't been found, and the anguish is considerable, but that doesn't mean that in this particular case he had the answer.
His mother repeatedly asked for her son's body so she could finally lay him to rest. She never gave up hope, but died in 2012 without ever getting that closure.
Give me a chance to get my lad back before anything happens to me, because I want him buried before even Brady dies, to let him know that he's the one that's got the main key and he can give it me, or the police, or the press, and they can tell the police and go and search for him.
For the family to have closure would mean finding Keith and giving him a family burial, and that would at least give them some peace. They could never forget Keith, could never forgive Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, but at least that would give them some closure and they can get on with their lives. And whilst Keith's body was still missing and questions were being asked of him, he still had that focus of attention, and I think he enjoyed that, and it makes you wonder whether he just wanted to torture the family right to the very end. It was a level, it was just control and manipulation.
Mrs. Joan Reed, the first victim's mother, spoke about how much she still missed her daughter.
She's not suffering now. Nobody can hurt her now. I feel her that close now, you see, so that seems to put me up a lot. I feel her so close to me. But I miss her very much, I still do.
In later years, Hindley claimed she had changed and applied for release multiple times, but all requests were denied. She remained in prison until her death in 2002. Brady was later moved to a high-security hospital due to mental health issues, and remained there until his death in 2017. In the early 1990s, Girly Chew moved from Malaysia to the United States, where she met a man calling himself Dylann Roof. They married in 1993 and settled in Albuquerque, living what appeared to be a normal life. But over time, the relationship began to fall apart, and by 1999, Girly had already started distancing herself from him. Then one morning, she didn't show up for work. At first, it seemed like a simple disappearance, until investigators stepped inside her apartment and found signs that told a very different story.
Girly Chew has disappeared.
On September 10th of 1999, she didn't show up for work. Her co-workers became very concerned. So they called the police immediately, and police officers responded to Girly's apartment. When they went in there, they looked at a carpet, they ran luminol tests on it, and they determined that it was human blood, but they didn't find the body there.
If she wasn't, she was badly wounded. Shortly thereafter, they find her wallet in the streets. Then they find clothing, a tarp with blood, and some duct tape with long strands of dark hair, which end up matching Girly's. But these items are found hundreds of miles away, a deserted, lonely highway near Magdalena, New Mexico. A highway worker is driving by and he sees these items, and instead of just throwing them in the back of his truck and throwing them in the trash, he actually calls state police and notifies them that he's found some clothes and maybe they ought to look into this.
Girly had discovered that her husband's identity was largely fabricated. He was actually Armand Chavez, a con artist who had falsely claimed medical credentials and built his life around deception. After a domestic violence incident, she moved out and filed for divorce, telling people close to her that she was afraid of him. At the same time, he was involved with other women, including Linda Henning, a former model who became closely connected to him. The two shared unusual beliefs and grew increasingly involved with each other, while Girly was trying to separate from him.
She seemed to be a fairly normal person, able to have a job, relate to people. But when he came along, things changed. Mostly what changed is she started doing whatever he wanted her to do.
Within a week, Linda had gone from this nice person to go and talk to she's sending a fax that was dated August 6th of 99. The cover of the fax says there are markers and cryostasis tubes at the end of my street. Save yourself. The reptile aliens are coming. Now, this is a week after she meets this person.
Individuals with delusional disorder actually seem normal for the most part until you start talking about the thing that they're delusional about.
I believe that there is an incredibly strong alien presence on this planet, and I believe that they are involved in the United States government. I believe that they have an agenda of genocide, of eradicating the human presence on this planet.
Extreme fixed beliefs is when conspiracy theories become very fixed in our mind. It's not so much just oh yeah, that's possible. It becomes this is definitely happening.
Who owns this planet? Well, I'm going to tell you that humanity does not. These creatures have been here way before mankind was ever thought of. Who owns this planet? Well, you're going to find out real soon.
Dylann told her that she was the queen of the world, that she had to go to war eventually with these reptilian alien queens, and she basically falls for it.
Linda believes that the fate of the universe rests on her, and she must vanquish Girly, this small bank teller who is actually an alien warrior queen.
On September 9th, 1999, Girly was last seen after finishing work. When she failed to return the next day, her co-workers reported her missing. Investigators quickly focused on her husband after learning he had left Albuquerque for South Carolina on the same day she disappeared. As the investigation progressed, attention turned to Linda Henning. She initially denied knowing Girly, but investigators proved she had interacted with her at the bank. She was later charged with lying to authorities, and further evidence began linking her to the case. Searches uncovered Girly's belongings discarded in a remote area, strengthening the case against both suspects. Despite extensive efforts, her body was never recovered.
When Dyazin testified, all eyes were on him, and he was prepared to make an entrance, which he did. It was one of the weirdest entrances a person I'd ever seen make, coming into the courtroom. He was just looking at people here and there, not in a friendly manner, and just sort of a creepy manner. Did you raise your right hand first? Do you swear testimony about to give us the truth under the penalty of perjury? Of course. Please be seated. I just got the feeling that here is somebody who is really evil.
Would you kind of tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your name?
I've never been in a room with someone that I felt was truly evil, and that's the impression I get from that man, that he actually is an evil person. And I've never experienced that before. I hope I never have to again.
It was a flawless plan. I mean, actually, if it wasn't flawless, you would have solved by now. 3 years down the line, you still don't know what happened.
He talked in a way, it was almost like some evil cartoon character.
When you decide you're going to commit, you decide that you're going to trade your life for theirs. I did that.
Part of it, I think, was an act, but he was also a pretty despicable human being.
The plan was that she would be abducted. Hopefully, she suffered the most excruciating pain known to mankind, was what I was.
Part of that may have been an act, because they adjust to whatever environment they're in and make you believe whatever you want them to believe. I think what he was doing there is trying to get Henning off and acting as evil as he could, although in ways you could tell it probably wasn't all that hard of an act for him, because he appeared to be a real evil person. He orchestrated this totally unnecessary killing of this woman because she didn't do what he wanted.
That she might be, so what? I mean, who cares? I don't. To this day, I have no remorse, no pity, no sorrow. I wanted to make sure that her parents knew and cried over 1,000 years over an empty grave. That's what I wanted. Murder is something you have to have the fortitude to do. It isn't something that goes lightly. It's something that you have to have predator qualities about you. You have to be able to do it and then not be afraid you're going to get caught.
In January 2002, Dyazin pleaded guilty, admitting his role in Girly Chew's death. He was sentenced to life in prison, plus additional years. Later that year, Linda Henning went to trial. During the proceedings, Dyazin attempted to take full responsibility and claimed she was not involved. Prosecutors argued this was an attempt to protect her. After reviewing the evidence, the jury found her guilty of multiple charges, including murder and conspiracy. She was sentenced to a long prison term. Girly Chew's body has never been found. In 1977, James Clifford Carson's life began to unravel. His behavior became increasingly unstable, leading his wife to leave with their daughter. Soon after, he met Susan Barnes, a divorced mother of 2. Their relationship developed quickly, and together they became deeply involved in drugs, mysticism, and extreme beliefs. They eventually reinvented themselves. James became Michael Bear Carson, and Susan became Susan Bear Carson, claiming their new identities were spiritually inspired. By 1980, after traveling through Europe, they returned to the United States and settled in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district. In March 1981, their roommate, Karen Barnes, a 23-year-old aspiring actress, was found dead inside their apartment. Evidence suggested the crime was committed by someone she knew. Before authorities could act, the Carsons disappeared. Later, they admitted they believed she was a witch a justification that would continue to shape their actions. They remained out of sight for months, hiding in a remote area near Grants Pass, Oregon. In May 1982, another incident occurred involving a farm worker named Clark Stevens after a dispute. His remains were later discovered, and investigators connected the case to the Carsons, who were now being actively pursued. As authorities searched for them, the couple managed to evade capture. In November 1982, Michael was briefly detained in Los Angeles but was mistakenly released, allowing them to continue moving. Their final crime took place in January 1983 near Bakersfield, California. While hitchhiking, they were picked up by John Charles Hillier. During the journey, a confrontation occurred, which led to a violent incident on a public road. Witnesses alerted police, and after a short pursuit, the couple was arrested. After their arrest, they publicly confessed to multiple claiming they were acting on a belief-driven mission. However, before the trial, they withdrew their confessions and pleaded not guilty. In 1984, both were convicted of multiple murders. For the murder of Karen Barnes, each received 25 years to life in prison. They were later convicted of the of Clark Stevens and John Charles Hillier, receiving additional sentences. In total, both were given combined sentences of 75 years to life. Years later, the story took another perspective through Jen Carson, the daughter of Michael Bear Carson. Raised largely away from him after her mother fled, she only learned the full truth about her father much later in life. In interviews, she described the difficulty of reconciling the man she remembered with the crimes he committed. Her story has been referenced in broader true crime discussions, including conversations around cases like the Gilgo Beach investigation, not because of a direct connection, but to highlight how families of offenders often live unaware of what is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, so, first and foremost, my heart goes out to the 5 known Gilgo victims. They had parents, they had children, siblings, but my heart also hurts for the family of Rex Heuermann. After I learned that my father was a suspect in 12 homicides, confessed to 3, also a plot to kill President Reagan, I was a small child, but I found out as a small child, and I it shattered my self-concept. I felt like I was Satan's spawn or the bad seed, or that I somehow was bad. And I survived several decades of thoughts and several days of life-threatening suicidal behaviors. But the good news is I now work in prevention, and I model recovery to others and encourage everyone to get help, which anyone listening can 24/7 by calling 988. Yeah, it's so interesting. The spectators are increasingly trying to predict plot twists and trying to identify like an origin story. And in reality, there was a Gilgo Beach task force with brilliant members of law enforcement working on this, dozens and dozens and dozens of experts. If those people could not identify this human predator, this human monster for decades, and he was so sophisticated at evading them in this era of modern technology, then of course he could deceive his family. Of course he could. No, of course, in any missing persons case or murder case, they always look close to home. And, so of course they will look at her. But what is known now is it appears that this was occurring when she was away. She stated verbally in an interview with my friend Matt Johnson with Court TV that she was taking it moment by moment. And she goes, not hour by hour, moment by moment. And you just hear the fatigue and sorrow, in her voice. Until there's any indication that this woman is involved, everyone needs to give her a little bit of space because, she is going through an experience that is essentially everyone's worst nightmare, that they had the stranger beside them, right? That there was wolf in sheep's clothing laying next to them in the bed. I mean, this is horrific. And so I hope that we can give her a little bit of both empathy and sympathy.
Both Michael Bear Carson and Susan Bear Carson remain in prison. Over the years, both have appeared before parole boards multiple times, but parole has consistently been denied, largely due to the severity of the crimes and continued opposition from victims' families. In 2011, in the small town of West Wendover, Nevada, Mickey Costanzo, Cody Lee Patton, and Tony Fratto were connected through school and personal relationships. Mickey was known for her academics, athletics, and leadership. She had previously dated Patton, but by early 2011, he was in a relationship with Fratto. In the weeks leading up to the incident, tension began to build. Patton's behavior was described as controlling, while Fratto became increasingly uncomfortable with his past connection to Mickey. Communication between Mickey and Patton continued, and prosecutors later pointed to jealousy and emotional pressure as key factors. On March 3, 2011, Mickey attended track practice as usual. After school, she agreed to go with Patton to talk. Fratto was also involved, and instead of staying in town, they drove toward a remote desert area near the Utah-Nevada border. In a later interview, Tony Fratto described what she claimed happened during that drive. She said Patton had been talking about harming Mickey for days, but she didn't believe he would actually act on it.
Did you know why you say he wanted to kill Michaela?
He never told me. He wouldn't give me any details of why.
He had Michaela in his car, and
correct.
You talked to him on the phone. Did he tell you that he had Michaela with him?
He said that he did, but I didn't believe him. I got in the car, and then I happened to turn back and saw Michaela in the cargo of the car.
So he drove out to basically the state line, out to this desert area, and then what happened?
Well, on our way out there, he had typed up a text on his phone, and it said, "We have to kill her." I didn't know exactly what that meant or why or anything.
But I guess he had said for a week that he was going to kill her. He then has her, I guess, tied up or at least somewhat incapacitated in the back of a car. You're driving out to a deserted area, and he says on a text, "We have to kill her." I think a lot of people find it hard to believe at that point you didn't know what was going to happen.
Yes, I had an idea, but like I've said before, I never thought in a million years he would do something like that.
According to her, she only realized something was wrong after getting into the car and noticing Mickey in the back as they drove. She said Patton showed a message on his phone saying that they had to kill her. Fratto claimed she was confused and unsure, saying she never fully believed he would go through with it, even as the situation escalated. At the desert location, Mickey was killed and her body was buried in a shallow grave. Some of her belongings were later destroyed in an attempt to hide evidence. When Mickey did not return home, her disappearance was reported immediately, and search efforts began. Within 2 days, a searcher noticed disturbed ground in the desert, leading to the discovery of her body. Investigators quickly focused on Patton, one of the last people seen with her. During questioning, he admitted involvement, though his account changed over time. At first, Fratto was not considered a suspect, but that changed when she later came forward and admitted her role. Her statement became a key turning point in the case. Mickey's sister, Christina Costanzo, later stated she believed Tony Fratto played a larger role than she admitted, describing her as a driving force behind the situation.
You hear what Tony has said about what happened that night, about the reasons behind it. Does it make any sense to you?
No, it does not.
None.
Tony says that basically Cody was the one doing all this for reasons she doesn't fully understand, that he never really would talk about why he was focused on Michaela. Do you believe that?
No, I do not. I believe that Miss Fratto is the instigator for the situation. Mr. Patton and my sister were very close friends. Ever since Tony Fratto and Cody started dating, Tony never even liked it when Michaela and Cody would associate with each other. And they lived in the same apartment complex. And when they spoke, Miss Fratto was very upset. I've seen it.
So you're saying that Tony Fratto was jealous of Cody talking to Michaela?
Yes. I believe that Mr. Patton would never have harmed my sister if Tony never wanted it.
In January 2012, Tony Fratto pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with a deadly weapon. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 18 years, along with additional time due to weapon enhancements. In May 2012, Cody Lee Patton pleaded guilty to first-degree murder with a deadly weapon. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During sentencing, the court noted that while many facts were clear, the exact motive remained difficult to fully define. Gwendolyn Graham and Catherine Wood both worked as nurses' aides at Alpine Manor Nursing Home in Walker, Michigan, a facility that cared for elderly patients who needed constant help. The two became close and, by 1986, started a relationship. They often worked night shifts together, where there was less staff and supervision, giving them long periods alone with residents. In January 1987, the first case happened when a resident during their shift under unusual circumstances. It was recorded as a natural death, so no investigation followed. Over the next few months, several more elderly women in their care died in a similar way during night shifts. Because deaths in such facilities were not unusual, nothing raised concern. There were no clear signs of harm, and no autopsies were done, so everything continued as normal. Later, Wood claimed the incidents were not random, but part of a shared secret tied to their relationship. But, at the time, there was no evidence to support this. The case only came to light after their relationship ended. Graham began seeing someone else, and later moved back to Texas, where she found work at another medical facility. In 1988, Wood spoke about the incidents to her ex-husband, who eventually went to the police. Investigators questioned Wood, and as she gave more details, the cases were reopened based mainly on her statements. 2 bodies were dug up for re-examination, but tests found no clear proof of wrongdoing. Even so, officials ruled the deaths as homicides, relying heavily on her account. In December 1988, both women were arrested, Wood in Michigan and Graham in Texas. During the trial, Wood accepted a deal with prosecutors. In exchange for testifying, her charges were reduced. She told the court that Graham carried out the acts while she assisted or stood watch. Graham denied the accusations, claiming the story was made up after their relationship ended.
Hello, is this Gwen?
Yes, it is. She's an evil person. She's an evil person, and whatever they need to do to keep her there, do it. After all these years, I still don't believe that anybody was murdered. I just don't. She was mad at me because I left her, I cheated on her.
Although there was little physical evidence, prosecutors also presented testimony from another person who claimed Graham had admitted to the acts. On November 3rd, 1989, Graham was found guilty of 5 murders and conspiracy and was sentenced to multiple life terms in prison. Wood was convicted of second-degree murder and conspiracy and received a shorter sentence. After spending decades in prison, she was released in 2020. Today, the case is still debated. Victims' families have pushed back against Wood's release, arguing she played a bigger role than she admitted.
Kathy Woods and Gwen Graham picked and chose who was going to and followed through with the murders of my mother and the other ladies.
Well, it's a safer place with her behind bars because she's going to do something again. Every year that she's behind bars, even if it's only for a couple more years, is one more year that nobody has to worry about tear in the eyes of a helpless old person.
The case became known as the Alpine Manor murders and remains one of the most disturbing examples of crimes inside a care facility, where trust and responsibility were expected, but instead were broken. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.